Let's rewrite Louisiana history. Privyet mai, tovarishchi. Welcome back to Ranking Every Assassin's Marksmanship. I'm Comrade Vadim, and today we're exploring one of the most controversial political assassinations in American history. We're looking at the assassination of Huey Long by Dr. Carl Weiss. We'll dive into who these men were, detail exactly what happened on that fateful day, break down the shooting, and then we'll head out to the range and test out how difficult this shot really was for ourselves. Huey Pierce Long Jr. was born August 30th, 1893 in Winfield, Louisiana. While the surrounding area around Winfield was one of the most impoverished parts of this nation, Long grew up in a modest, middle-class family. Long was a gifted speaker with a charismatic charm from a very early age. During his high school and then his college days, he worked on and off as a traveling salesman. Although being quite successful for a high school and college student, sometimes the work would just disappear and he'd quickly run out of money. Now that's how the story usually goes. However, it is also said that Long once borrowed money for college and he lost it all in the casino that same day. So let's just say that Long wasn't exactly cut out to be the 1900s version of Dave Ramsey. But in college, he studied law, passing the Louisiana State Bar after only 3 semesters of study between the University of Oklahoma and Tulane University in 1915. Once again, he used those extra charisma points to convince the Louisiana Supreme Court to allow him to take the bar early, which of course worked out very favorably for Long. That same year, Long opened up a practice back home in Winfield. However, he told those close to him that the moment he passed that bar exam, he was already running for office. Before his public debut into politics, he worked for the working class of Winfield, mostly taking workers' comp cases, which made him very popular. In 1918, after successfully avoiding the draft of World War I, Long made his public debut into politics, running to serve on the board of the Louisiana Railroad Commission. Having been burned on some investments by John Rockefeller's Standard Oil Company, Long had developed a very left-leaning economic ideology. During this race to serve on the Railroad Commission, Long ran on the message that he was this young warrior fighting for the working class, against Wall Street and against the 1% who held the majority of the wealth. Using his salesman charm, powerful speeches, and working class reputation, after a long, gruesome battle and a race that went into the runoffs, Long secured a seat on the Railroad Commission. Now after this moment, Long's political rise was quick. Known affectionately and sometimes mockingly as the Kingfish, Long made historic changes to how large companies such as Standard Oil could operate inside of Louisiana while serving on the Railroad Commission. He worked tirelessly to help people gain public office that he liked, such as John Parker, who got governorship. He then ran against John Parker in 1924 but lost, and then he finally gained governorship in 1928. And he made many enemies during that race because of his populist platform that fiercely attacked the wealthy elite and corporations. Long worked quickly and brutally as governor. Within the first year, he fired hundreds of state workers who opposed his party and replaced those workers with loyalists to him. He was infamously known for showing up to the state Senate and House and bullying his political rivals, while also encouraging and maybe threatening a little bit those middle-of-the-road politicians who were dragging their feet on bills he expected them to vote for. He once ran the congressional floor such that 44 bills could be passed in only 2 hours. Now for reference, that's 1 bill every 3 minutes. Well, this is a little fast. Our Congress could at least take some notes on this. I mean, come on! While many of the accomplishments he's known for were through the correct means, such as passing bills, there was one incident. Being a gambler himself, and almost ruining his life because of it, he grew a great hatred for gambling halls. Now, if you're familiar with New Orleans at all, you can probably imagine that Long wasn't the biggest fan of this city. He ordered his National Guard to go into New Orleans and ransack a number of gambling halls and brothels, arrest the prostitutes, confiscate money, destroy the building, and reportedly told those National Guardsmen to shoot without hesitation if anyone got in their way. Of course, many politicians both in Louisiana and nationally spoke out against Long's gross misuse of power, but Long reportedly only had to say, "Nobody asked." Other moments include a physical brawl during an impeachment attempt, congressmen receiving death threats before key votes, and even reported bribery. But by this point, Long's loyalists were everywhere, and his support held firm. In 1930, Long announced that he would be running for U.S. Senate, and after a long and very corrupt race, in 1932, Long officially transitioned to the national stage, but he maintained a tight grip on Louisiana politics through those loyalists.
When it's sunny June and December too, or in the winter time or spring, there'll be peace without end, every neighbor a friend, with every man a king.
Now as a polarizing figure on the national level, Long introduced many bills, plans, and policies that reflected that polarizing nature, all while using his charismatic charm to continue to rise up the totem pole and gain popularity. Long introduced the socialist-minded Share Our Wealth plan, proposing wealth redistribution on a national scale by limiting inheritance, yearly income, and maximum portfolio values. His populist rhetoric worried the establishment, and his strongman tactics that he's brought over from his old state congressional floor days made him enemies in both conservatives and moderates. By 1935, Long was considered a serious potential challenger to President Franklin D. Roosevelt. While Long gave many conflicting answers on what his intentions were with the presidency, he did end up writing a book titled My First Days in the White House, so I think we can kind of infer what his long-term goals were. FDR and his team weren't just worried that Long could win, they were also worried that he could split the vote. A fractured liberal base would hand the 1936 election over to a Republican, and that alone could set Long up for the 1940 election if the Depression worsened. Either way, they saw him as a serious threat. To his followers, Long was a hero to the poor, using his strengths to make things right in the government. But to his enemies, he was a dangerous demagogue with a thirst for power. Carl Austin Weiss was born December 6, 1906, in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He came from a respected, wealthy line of physicians, and from the beginning, it seemed that Carl was destined for a life of success and stability. His upbringing was privileged but strict. His father, Carl Weiss Sr., was a prominent doctor who expected excellence, and Carl delivered. He graduated from Baton Rouge High School, went on to earn his undergraduate degree from Louisiana State University, and then pursued higher medical studies in Europe, studying at some of the finest medical institutions in Austria and Germany. In his free time away from his medical studies, Weiss liked to explore the cities and pick up souvenirs. One such souvenir was supposedly a .32 caliber FN Model 1910 that he would eventually bring back home. When he returned home to Louisiana in the early 1930s, he was the pride of his community. Intelligent, soft-spoken, and diligent, he quickly became a prominent physician in Baton Rouge. Those who knew him described him as reserved, polite, and almost painfully private. He had no criminal record, no history of violence, and no outward signs of political extremism. He was just Mr. Dr. Normal. In 1933, Weiss married Yvonne Pavey, the daughter of Judge Benjamin Henry Pavey, an anti-Long judge representing a political dynasty that Long was trying to crush through his fast-paced legislature and bullying tactics. And that is where Weiss's path crosses the Kingfish's, not because he sought out some conflict, but because Long made it personal. Long had been targeting Judge Pavey for months, if not years, trying to force him off the bench. Long publicly accused Pavey of corruption and spread rumors about his racial background in hopes to discredit him, and this was a very powerful smear in Louisiana at the time, with the KKK still having a very strong foothold. When the district backed Pavey anyway, Long escalated the fight. He attempted to gerrymander Pavey's district to force him out. At that point, it wasn't just politics anymore. it was personal. To Weiss, it wasn't just that his father-in-law was under attack. It was that his entire family's honor, reputation, and future were being dragged through the mud by the most powerful man in the state. Despite all this, there is no evidence that Weiss plotted revenge in advance. No manifesto, no political speeches, and no threats. To everyone around him, Dr. Weiss was still just the same mild-mannered doctor that he always has been. But then came September 8th, 1935. It's the evening of September 8th, 1935. Huey Long is at the Louisiana State Capitol in Baton Rouge, attending a legislative session that had stretched into the night. Using his infamous bullying and scare tactics, Long had just helped pass House Bill No. 1, a bill redistricting key sections of Louisiana in hopes of ousting Judge Benjamin Pavey. Around 9:20 p.m., Long exited the House chamber and began making his way through the Capitol's grand hallways. He was accompanied by a small entourage of his political allies and his personal bodyguards, the Cossacks. Waiting up ahead for him was Dr. Carl Weiss, son-in-law of Dr. Benjamin Pavey, who had essentially just lost his job. Weiss stood behind a pillar, armed with a compact FN Model 1910, knowing exactly where Long would pass. As Long approached, Weiss stepped out from concealment. Accounts vary slightly, but most witnesses agree. Weiss confronted Long and fired a single shot from about 4 feet away and hit Long in the torso. Long screamed and sprinted toward the exit, blood staining his white suit. His bodyguards immediately opened fire on Weiss, unloading over 60 rounds on him and killing him instantly. Chaos exploded through the marble halls of the Capitol. Lawmakers ducked for cover, staffers screamed, and an amalgamation of blood pooled on the stone tiles, mingled between Weiss's body and the place where Long had stood moments before. Long, seriously wounded but still conscious, was rushed to Our Lady of the Lake Hospital in Baton Rouge, where doctors scrambled to save the life of the man who ruled Louisiana with an iron fist. Alright, let's get to the fun part and talk about the gun. Dr. Carl Weiss used the Belgian-made FN Model 1910, chambered in .32 ACP, and luckily for us, I happen to have one right here. Now mine's chambered in .380, however, it's close enough, still a 1910. Now the FN Model 1910 is a compact semi-auto pistol designed by the famous John Moses Browning, you know, the guy who designed basically half of every gun in every history book ever. It was first produced by Fabrique Nationale in Belgium in...
Anyone?
1910. If you got that right, congratulations! Now, sit down and stop being a teacher's pet. Come on, we all knew that. Dr. Weiss's choice of gun wasn't really anything fancy for the time either. These pistols are known for being very reliable, concealable, and extremely popular between both civilians and military officials, as well as, unfortunately, assassins. Outside of this event on Huey Long, you may also recognize the FN Model 1910 from the famous assassination on Archduke Franz Ferdinand that started World War I. Episode coming soon. Weiss's gun was chambered in .32 ACP, which was, for the time, one of the most common self-defense rounds. It's by no means a powerhouse of a round, but at short distances like we see between Huey Long and Dr. Weiss, well, it gets the job done. One thing you notice immediately when handling this gun is just how small and slim it is. Now, the grip is a little short for my liking, but everything else about this gun is very comfortable. It would have made it very concealable for anybody, including Dr. Weiss, to either conceal inside, a jacket pocket or maybe even some deep pant pockets. It's also super simple to operate. You have your manual safety back here, you have your magazine release lever down there, you have a very early beaver tail safety, and outside of that, it is simply just rack, point, and shoot. One negative I have to say about this gun though is that the sights are a milled notch on top of the frame, and you do have a front post there. However, the height of that front post is extremely small, so when you're acquiring your sight picture, it's very difficult to find that front post quickly. However, these were designed for very short ranges, and you're probably not doing any sharpshooting with these, so I guess they kind of get the pass. Now, for those of you who have fired .32 ACP or even .380, you'll know that it's quite pleasant to shoot. There's very little recoil, making it very manageable. I'm sure this is also advantageous for reacquiring your target on subsequent shots. Of course, the front sight post that we just talked about is kind of working against you, but none of this mattered for Weiss, because he only got one shot off before those Cossacks lit him up. As for this specific Model 1910 I have here, everything's just so comfortable and well balanced, even compared to some of my more modern handguns. The craftsmanship of these old Belgian girls is just outstanding, and I have just such a beautiful example of that here. They're simple, durable, and made for real-world use. And historically speaking, it's very possible that Weiss didn't specifically seek out this gun for the assassination. As I mentioned earlier, as he was studying abroad in Europe, it's suspected that he bought this FN Model 1910 for as low as $25. So when the time came, he just grabbed what was closest to him and headed to the capital. So now let's break down the actual shot. Weiss waited behind a pillar in the hallway and listened as Long and his entourage approached. Just as they passed, Weiss stepped out from behind concealment, raised his pistol, fired a single shot from about 4 feet away, and hit Long in the stomach, grazing one of his kidneys. And as we already know, that's all Weiss had time to do because the Cossacks immediately lit him up. Despite the short distance, the stressful environment and chaotic nature of the shot would have probably made it a little bit more difficult than it sounds, especially for someone like Weiss who had no prior firearms experience that we know of. Long was rushed to Our Lady of the Lake Hospital in Baton Rouge, but his condition was much worse than first initially thought. The bullet had grazed his kidney, fragmented into other vital organs, and caused internal bleeding. Initially, doctors were optimistic. Long even joked with his surgeons, insisting that he would recover and get back to work. But within hours, complications began to set in. Peritonitis, a deadly infection caused by internal wounds, quickly began spreading throughout his body. And despite multiple surgeries, Long's condition began deteriorating. The next day, doctors discovered that he was hemorrhaging from his kidney. 31 hours after being shot, in the early morning hours of September 10, 1935, Huey Long died at the age of 42. Weiss, on the other hand, never left the Capitol building. He died instantly after being shot dozens of times by Long's bodyguards. His body remained on the floor of the Capitol for hours as police and reporters swarmed the scene. In the immediate aftermath of the assassination, the official story was clear. Weiss had assassinated Long out of personal revenge for the political persecution of his father-in-law, Judge Pavey. But as time passed, doubts began to grow. Some theorists claimed that Weiss never intended to kill Long, that he just confronted him, maybe even punched him, and that Long's bodyguards, who were a little too trigger-happy, were the ones who actually shot Long. They point out the overwhelming number of shots fired and the chaotic scene as evidence that the situation spiraled out of control. Other theorists claim that Weiss didn't even have a gun on him, that it was taken from his car and planted at the scene. Still more wild, an autopsy of Weiss performed in 1991 showed that Weiss had been shot from the front, the right side, the left side, and the back. Along with this, a .38 caliber slug was discovered, which didn't match the firearms used by Long's bodyguards. All of this suggests that the chaos, not a clear-cut plan, decided the events for that night, and possibly that a third party missed Weiss and hit Long. Regardless of the theories, the official story never changed. Dr. Carl Weiss was branded as an assassin. The very reputation that he was trying to protect, his family's honor, was destroyed in a moment. His family would live in the shadow of that moment for decades. As for Long, his death left a gaping hole in Louisiana politics and maybe even national politics. Whether he would have run for president, beat FDR, or split the Democratic vote remains one of the great what-ifs of American history. In death, as in life, Long remained larger than life. A hero to some, a villain to others, and a symbol of just how explosive political ambition can be. With the historical context set, it's time to go to the range and put ourselves in Dr. Carl Weiss's shoes. Let's see just how challenging this assassination really was.
Hello, guys. Thank you very much, past Comrade Vadim, for that great story of Huey Long. So as you heard, Huey Long was assassinated by Dr. Carl Weiss. So today we are going to recreate that assassination. Today we have the FN Model 1910 that we have so graciously been able to acquire for this video, thanks to our sponsor, Comrade Vadim. Like, subscribe, comment, guys. These aren't cheap, but I want to give you the best comments, so help me help you. So let's go, warm up a little bit, set up the shot, talk about how it was done, and see how good of a marksman Dr. Carl Weiss really was. Alright, so we have our Model 1910 here. This one is absolutely beautiful. I did just get it not too long ago for this purpose and another one coming up. If anyone in the comments down below knows how to date these, as in year of production, please let me know. I looked around online a little bit. I saw some talk about head stamping, but I didn't find any head stamps on mine, so would love to hear your guys' thoughts. But let's go ahead, put a few shots downrange and warm up. Do it. So I imagine Dr. Carl Weiss didn't take up the proper shooting stand for this, so we're going to give a few gunslingers here. Oh yeah, I'm warmed up. Huey Long was walking out of the Capitol building, and Dr. Carl Weiss was sitting in the entryway, walked up to him probably with his bodyguards nearby, put one in his chest. Now, if you remember, Dr. Carl Weiss had an even worse day than Huey, but we're not looking at that today. Alright, I got one loaded up. Let's rewrite Louisiana history. Not too bad, right where we wanted it. Let's go again. Mr. Senator, Mr. Senator! All right, one last try. Here we go. All right, so that was all three. We got 1, 2, and 3, all in the region we wanted. So that shows that Dr. Carl Weiss had a pretty easy shot. It was a very close range. Huey Long wasn't suspecting anything, so he was just walking straight towards him. Good center of mass shot for the doctor. So based on all that, I'm going to give Dr. Carl Weiss's marksmanship a D rank.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode of Ranking Every Assassin's Marksmanship, make sure to check out the rest of the series, both the long-form breakdowns and the shorts. Every assassin has a story, and every shot tells us something new. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Tell me what you thought of the video, and tell me, who do you think was the better assassin? Dr. Carl Weiss or Huey Long's bodyguards? Well, I'll see you in the next one. Das Vidania.